Scott Frost returns to UCF. It finds himself in his happy place. But is his happy place enough for success yet again? Now he's in the Big 12. Let's talk about it on this college crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On UCF.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to this special Locked On College crossover of Locked On UCF and Locked On Kansas State. I'm Christian Rao with Locked On Kansas State, joined with me by Mike Giddens of Locked On UCF. This is going to be a really fun episode for you today. We're going to dive in deep about these UCF Knights. There's just a lot to talk about, and they are technically still a new team in the Big 12. There's some familiar faces, but there's still lots to talk about. Position battles, especially at the quarterback position, and can they get to a bowl game for the first time in the Big 12 era for this team? We'll do a lot of that talking on this episode. Before we do that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. I still can't believe that kind of deal for that kind of code, Mikey. It's just absolutely insane. Let's dig into this. Welcome to the show. We haven't talked in a while, so I'm glad that you and I have an opportunity to sit back and discuss. And it's been a couple weeks since we've had some discussions, and we kind of dug into the quarterback battle at one point, you and I, with UCF here, because a lot of transfers coming in, obviously a lot of new faces in the Scott Frost era. And I want to get to that in just a second. But first I wanted to get to, there's some rumblings popping back and forth with Scott Frost. And obviously he didn't have a successful tenure at Nebraska. I think we can say that safely. I think that's probably a really safe way to say of how his run went at Nebraska. It didn't go good, didn't go well, but he was fantastic at UCF his first time around. You go back to 2017, he went 12-0. He had the American Athletic Conference Championship, and then he gets back for his second tenure. Now, when he was introduced back to UCF, he had an interesting quote that I've always found very intriguing since he's come back. And he said, there's a lot of pressure when he talked about taking the Nebraska job. It was hard for me to leave UCF. It was emotional. And when you're climbing the ladder of success in life, sometimes they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy. So, sounds like Scott Frost has found his happy place yet again back at UCF. But here's my question to you, Mike. Is a happy place enough? Because last year it wasn't enough for UCF in the Big 12. Is it enough for him to get back in contention in the Big 12 to find success in this conference?
One of the things that I think is important just in life in general is that if you're not happy doing what you're doing, are you really going to do the best job that you can do long term? You may be able to sustain that for a period of time, but certainly, college coaching is, man, let me tell you something. The grind of college coaching is not for everybody. And if you're going to compound that in being in a place where you can't be happy, then certainly the job's going to be very hard. Let me tell you, Christian, I cover college sports at a wide level, not just UCF, but I've talked to coaches who, it just getting their families to move with them when they take another job sometimes is a difficult place. They have to live apart from their kids, from their wives for a period of time to try to make it work and then bring them when it makes sense for school and all these things. And so if you're Scott Frost, yes, I do think that it's a bigger factor in this second go around than most people are giving it credit for. He wants to be here. And that's such a great quote. They forget to tell you to stop when you're happy. And let me tell you something. At his income level, there is no correlation between his happiness and how much money he's making.
That's a good point.
The studies show this, right? They say past a certain income level, there's no real correlation between how much you make and how happy you are. It's just all choices. What choices do you make for yourself financially? Well, when you're in a financial place where you can make almost any financial decision you want, I mean, short of buying like a G5 jet or an NBA team or something crazy like that, he's happy. He's making enough money to provide for his family and to do the things that he wants to do. And now that thing inside him that wants to find success at this level, to reach the next level, to push UCF into a championship position, That's the thing that's really going to make him happy. And look, Nebraska was an opportunity. I don't think anybody faults him for chasing that. Look, better coaches than Scott Frost have done the coaching chase, and it's not worked out for them. But he's very blessed and fortunate to find a second life at UCF to be able to come home and do this in a place where he's familiar, where he made inroads in recruiting, where he understands the recruiting landscape, in a conference where he is no longer handicapped, Christian, by, oh, well, you're not in one of the Power 5 conferences, so you don't have a chance, even though you had an undefeated season. If UCF has an undefeated season in the Big 12, they're going to get a shot to win it all. And I think that's all that Scott Frost has ever really wanted in his career. Look, this is not a quote directly from Frost, and you don't quote me directly on this one, but I think that if he could have won it all at UCF the first go round, he may never leave. Right? Because they may, he may never leave. He may stay there despite what's in front of him. Besides the money, what motivation does any coach have to leave a program that they have success at? It's the opportunity at championships. And if you don't feel like you're uniquely positioned to do that where you are, then you're going to chase the job that affords you that opportunity. And I think that's what Scott Frost did when he left for Nebraska. Now that he's back, look what Arizona State did. Our guy Richie was having a blast this year.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Like, they were picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. They won the whole doggone thing. And they gave us probably the most entertaining playoff game of the entire CFP.
Oh, for sure.
But after it was over, Kenny Dillingham got on the mic and said, please give us money because we can't keep this going and we'll have money to do it. And so if you're Scott Frost, you've just got to show this year that you have a formula for moving this thing forward. I know we're going to talk about later in the show about, what the over-under is here for them and what the expectations are. But nobody expects a championship in year one. I think the biggest blessing of this is that he has time to build a consistent and steady winner rather than having to show a flash in the pan year one and then never being able to live up to those expectations again.
I'm glad you said time. And let me just push back a little bit just for the sake of this conversation. Let me play devil's advocate. You said time. And maybe this is me just being, whatever the case. Recency bias of the last season at UCF was the greatest that he ever had. So after having unsuccessful seasons at Nebraska, 5 consecutive losing seasons, blah, 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 whatever you want to talk about, is this happy place because he's used to being a winning program? He's not going to have that potentially right away. Does that make it a short-lived happy place? Or, as you mentioned, does time change things? Knowing that he has that time to build it the way that he wants to, maybe there's trust within this program. I think that you're going to probably lean towards the latter here, but does it make you wonder or maybe even concerned at all that he wants to come back to his happy place, knowing that last time we saw Scott Frost, the expectations of the fans are he brought this team to 12-0. Can he do it again in the Big 12?
Yeah, I mentioned covering college sports at a wide level, and I can tell you one of the conversations that happens during this rehire process is, what is your vision for the program and what is your timeline for building a winner? And in that, you have to have a conversation, a real conversation about what resources do you need to make that happen? There are things that are not going to happen in a year. They're not going to happen in 2 years. And Terry Mohajir understood that when he hired Scott Frost. He understands the state of the program when he hired him. And there are certain things that happen, Christian, when you turn a coach over, the attrition, the natural attrition that happens, that are things that you need time to do. Look, talking to college coach after college coach, one of the things that a lot of the top level college coaches believe is that to build a sustainable winner, it is still done through high school recruiting. You cannot know how good a recruiting class is for 2, 3, maybe sometimes maybe even 4 years until after those kids hit campus, depending on which one's redshirt or how fast they develop. So there's got to be realistic expectations around what it's going to take and how long it's going to take to build a winner. The portal has shortened that conversation for some programs because you can go out and if you're a piece away, you can go find your $1 million quarterback in the portal, or you can find that one piece that you're missing to make your program whole and compete for a championship. Look at it was so hard to do before. You and I have had many discussions about Auburn, for example, and look what happened with them with Cam Newton in 2010. He was the difference between a 7-5 Auburn and literally undefeated national championship Heisman. The portal has afforded you the opportunity to be able to find a Cam Newton type of player, right, where normally they would have to sit out a year, because remember, he went all the way to junior college and came back. And Auburn had to be in a unique place to pick him up. So if you're Scott Frost, you don't have the money that some of your Big 12 counterparts have, so you have to spend your money in the portal wisely. And with what UCF is doing, I love what they're doing with their collective and how they're rearranging the funds and the competitive success fund is what they're calling it. They're putting themselves in a position to say, hey, if you can show the results that you're building towards some, remember, the floor we found out last year is 4 wins. So nobody expects UCF to go from a 4-win team to a 9-win team in 1 year. It's just not realistic. You lost probably the second best back in college football, in my opinion. I think that was validated by where he got drafted in RJ Harvey. And you've got to bring something together that's going to take time. You got to do that through high school recruiting. We know that takes time. You're not going to have a bunch of freshmen come in and be all Big 12. They're going to need some time to develop. And then, in year 3, we'll be having a real conversation about whether Scott Frost is the guy for the job or not.
Well, maybe he finds his Cam Newton early. Maybe that would be helpful, definitely for sure, to help them get back to a bowl and rebuild this team right away. We'll dig into the quarterback battle next, and I want to ask you some more questions about the return of Scott Frost right here on this special Locked On College crossover of Locked On UCF and Locked On Kansas State. But first, Mike, I got to tell you about Monarch Money, because that's what today's episode is brought to you by. And, I personally, after checking my bank account, I sometimes wonder, and I'm sure you have too, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, maybe some of those nice, awesome lightings that you got going on right now behind you. It's just really easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your financing. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. The easiest thing for me is being able to delete all the other apps and knowing I just have one app to worry about with Monarch Money, because you can stop spending your money in one place, stop managing your money, and start building wealth. I had a really hard time, Mike. I don't know about you, but I have a really tough time spending on food delivery. Is that bad for you? You mess with stuff like that?
Yeah, it's not food delivery. It's my girlfriend's Amazon habit, but Monarch Money is helping us put a handle on it.
Oh, I appreciate that, because you get all-in-one convenience, you get easy collaborations. You can mess with your girlfriend there, managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts and stay on the same page without stress. So I'm sure you took advantage of it, because I certainly did. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. And welcome back to this college crossover of Kansas State and UCF. You can find both these channels wherever you're listening on your podcast or on the opposite. So please hit subscribe, hit like, rate, review, all that good stuff, because we are bringing you content every single day like no other, your team every day. We're talking the Scott Frost era returning to UCF, and it's an interesting era for him to come back after failing to be with Nebraska after 5 consecutive losing seasons. He gets back after a little bit of a hiatus, back to his successful tenure with UCF. Will he be able to get back to those 12-0 vibes? Well, that will be a question that we'll find out in the future. But speaking of vibes, before I get into this quarterback battle, because I think that is probably the highlight, at least from the outside looking in, Mike, of who will be the quarterback for UCF in 2025, at least in week 1. What are the vibes between the fan base right now, after knowing that Scott Frost is back, after moving on from Gus Malzahn, who is now the offensive coordinator at Florida State, having Scott Frost back in the fold? How are fans feeling right now?
It's a mixed bag. Athletic director Terry Mohajir is under a lot of fire for the state of UCF athletics right now, women's basketball, men's basketball, and now football. all having losing seasons. That's a tough place to be. So, his charge is always and will always be to fix football first and foremost. And they feel like they've got a good plan with Scott Frost. So UCF fans, are kind of fed up is what I've gotten from, this administration and how they've handled UCF sports. They were definitely fed up with Gus Malzahn and ready to move on. And so hiring Scott Frost injected some enthusiasm back into the fan base. A lot of people felt like this was a great hire. This is a guy that they're familiar with. He was well loved. I think he left UCF the right way. A lot of people understood the move. And there wasn't a lot of sour grapes from what I gather in the interviews that I've done around this about him deciding to take that job. A lot of people understood it. So having the opportunity to rehire him, it was viewed very favorably by the fans, and they're just looking forward to the future. So I mentioned in our last segment, he's just got to give them something to chew on in this first season, right? And it may not be reflected completely in the win-loss columns, but Christian, if you can show them some QB development, right? We're going to talk about QBs here in a second, but goodness gracious, I don't think I can remember a P4 program that went to their fourth string quarterback in one season and nobody got hurt and everybody was healthy. And that's where they were with Dylan Risk. I really liked it. That young man, he decided to hit the portal here after the spring, and I don't blame him. Look, he's got to find a place where he could make his mark. But Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton, he's not their guy. And a QB, when you get a new coach, they want to bring their guy in. So, I think if you can show QB development and you can get that passing attack going the way they had it going in 2017 and that signature Scott Frost style, that'll be enough for the fan base in year one. Now, making a bowl game would be nice. And I think that they have enough talent. I thought they had enough talent to make a bowl game last year. I thought coaching was the difference between 4-8 and 6-6. Personally, I don't think it was talent, but certainly he's going to have an opportunity to show them a little something in this first year that they'll be able to say, look, he took us from 4-8 to 6-6 or 7-5 or something reasonable. I think those are reasonable expectations in year one. And then as you begin to develop your roster, maybe year two is a little bit of the same, but year three, I think is really, I got to point to that's really where you should see that jump. And so when you hire a coach, the portal has gotten everybody in this place where they are expecting miracles year over year. And I think that the slow, steady winner is still the ones that we see at the top here with steady recruiting. And as he wins, more resources will get pumped into the program because those donors, their pocketbooks will start to loosen. They're going to support him at a higher level. And then he's just got to continue to evaluate and develop at a higher level than his coaching peers in the Big 12. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you pick a guy in the portal, think about it. Gus went out and they dropped the bag on KJ Jefferson and they benched him before midseason. And if you're Scott Frost, you can't afford that, right? If the guys with the checkbooks are going to break it out to help get you a quarterback that's, right now a decent one's going to cost you $1 million in the portal, you can't miss. So he's got to hit more than he misses here when he brings guys in and they do spend the money. I think they've got the moxie, and I think they've got the plan to do it.
Well, in order to keep the fan base excited and to give them something to look forward to, as you mentioned, if you want to consider a 3-year project or 3-year development plan, you got to have a supporting cast. And he did bring in some players. He had no choice because there were a lot of players leaving in the portal, graduation, NFL draft, you name it. And the quarterback position group still seems like an interesting one from the outside looking in. Have they decided on who is QB1 as of right now before we get the fall camp, or is that still a battle yet to be determined? If so, who is the front runner?
That's the battle that's still going into fall camp right now. I don't know that there's a clear front runner. You've got Taven Jackson, who came in from Indiana. You've got Cam Fancher. And then you've got the incumbent, Ja'Cory Brown, who was here last season. Now, he dynamic with his legs, but could not get it going through the air with his arm. There are a lot of people, himself included, who feel like, hey, he's going to make a jump and be in the race here. I think when Scott Frost came in, a lot of the attention went to the new guys, to Fancher and to Jackson, about whether they would be the guys there. My guy, Andrew Gluchov from The Last Word on Sports, comes on the show every week, thinks that Taven Jackson is going to be the guy. But don't count Ja'Curry Brown out. I mean, he's just a fantastic athlete. And if Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton can bring him along, with his arm, get some accuracy issues under control and figure out how to harness that big arm, he could be in the mix. So this will be the development piece that I just talked about. Can you imagine if they can take a QB from last year's roster and make them into a QB that could get them 6 or 7 games?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, find a way to develop it. So 3 potential quarterbacks to be in the race here. Is there a way that we run into the same issue we did last year where all 3 of them find themselves in a game, like without injuries? Or is this something where when they have a clear-cut guy, Scott Frost is going to run with them? Or what? What are we thinking here? Like, are we running into deja vu again?
I think the guy is going to be the guy. And if they decide to make a switch, barring injury, you may see the backup. But I have supreme confidence in McKenzie Milton and as a young coach and his ability to be able to develop whoever it is that they decide to go with. These 2 guys together, I think they have a chance to be one of the better head coach QB coach duos in the country. I love McKenzie Milton, and I'm telling you, I've yet to meet him personally. I'm hoping to do that in the near future, but I can tell you, I've done the interviews, I've talked to people around him, cannot find or hear a bad thing about this guy and his ability to be able to see and understand the game and teach that. And so he's a really, really young and promising coaching talent. I think when you mix him with Scott Frost and his abilities to be able to bring up young coaches, it's going to be fun to watch what these guys do with the passing game. So McKenzie Milton might be a guy that Scott Frost has trouble holding on his staff here in the future as he begins to show what he can do with QB. So I think it's going to be fun to watch, and all eyes are going to be on it. I like how they've set them up in terms of getting people to understand that this is going to be a process here. I'm going to continue to preach it for as long as I'm on Locked On UCF. It's patience, patience, patience with the process.
With Frost and Milton and whoever the quarterback is, they're going to obviously have to make some sort of successful jump, whether it's in year 1 or not, because 4-8 obviously is not going to cut it. And our friends at FanDuel don't think that that's where it's going to be either. We're going to talk win totals and more as we finish up this special Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On UCF. We're chatting today because Kansas State takes on UCF, and it's actually the Big 12 opener for you. Not for us, but for UCF, Kansas State is the one that starts it off for you in the Big 12 in 2025. Now, it won't be your first tough task, at least we think so, because they got to take on UNC with Bill Belichick. And, I mean, there's a lot of drama going on there. I've heard more drama than I've heard of actual player progress and performance out of Chapel Hill right now. So we're not actually sure what UNC is going to look like after Mac Brown in year 1 of Coach Belichick. But with that being said, you got a couple what should be easy non-conference games before UNC, and then you come to Manhattan on September 27th. Then, of course, you got a pretty tough Big 12 schedule, in my opinion. Now, you do miss out on the Big 12 champs in Arizona State and the runners-up in Iowa State, but you got Baylor on the road. You got BYU on the road, which might be a little easier now after what's going on with Jake Retzlaff and all of that issue and the potential of them not having their quarterback 1 for the season. And then Texas Tech on the road. Your road schedule looks a little tough, not going to lie, in year 1 of Scott Frost in the Big 12. According to our friends over at FanDuel, win-loss totals over under, if you will, 5.5 wins, though. Better than that 4-8 record. That means that FanDuel's putting you right on that bubble. Asking fans, do you think UCF is a bowl team? Can they get to that 6-win mark even with this schedule? What say you?
Look, what I would like our listeners to do is download Monarch Money, log in with your login credentials, and then there's a section that says help and say, I'm sorry, and then bet the whole 401k on UCF for the over, Christian, because they're going to hit the over. I'm telling you. A little preview for fans later this week. We have a segment coming, top 5 games for UCF. I'll give fans this. It's not some big reveal, but At the top of the list, I do have that Kansas State game. I think it's going to be so pivotal. By that time in the season, you will have played North Carolina already, and so you'll find out a little bit about what UCF is going to be this season. But look, I think that last year's team was so undercoached. We're talking, they won 4 games last year. You're telling me that Scott Frost and his system and his ability to be able to get that offense going isn't going to be worth +2 games in this first year? I think that it will be, and we'll find out quickly if it will be. But certainly, look, man, there's some tough games on that schedule. Texas Tech spent Texas A&M money in the portal, per reports. On the low end figure, I think I heard they spent like $10 million. High end, $30-40 million. They just spent a lot of money to try to get some talent in there. And if you're UCF, you're going to have some challenges there with Kansas State. You haven't. You got Texas Tech on there. I think the early season showdown with North Carolina, BYU to close out the year. There are some really, really tough games there, but I think that these guys are going to get 2 more games over what happened last year. Last year was it was so anomalous what happened last season. I want you to think about this. RJ Harvey ran for so many yards last season, 6.8 yards per carry. The only back in the country to average more yards per carry than RJ Harvey was Ashton Genty. And of the top 10 running backs in yards in the country, Harvey finished 6th. He had the least amount of carries. He was so underutilized last year. And so what I'm counting on this year is that these guys will understand how to get the most out of their stars. RJ Harvey was dynamic. But I'm telling you, he should have been closer to 2,000 yards rushing than where he finished. And that's how bad they were offensively last year. I don't think it's near as bad. It may not be great, but I think it'll be good enough for 2 more wins. And I would bet the over on UCF in 2025 for sure.
From the outside looking in, when I look at this schedule here, I think it's doable if you can just overachieve just slightly based on last year. And if you think Scott Frost and what he has is enough for 2 wins, if you start off strong in your non-conference with Jacksonville State and North Carolina A&T, there's 2 right there. And even if you lose to UNC and you start 2-1, I think you can find a way to have a winning record, go 5-4 in Big 12, assuming that Cincinnati's still on the down, West Virginia's still rebuilding, Oklahoma State. Those are 3 wins you can assume that are going to be towards the bottom of the conference. So you just got to find 1 or 2 maybe potential upsets. Could be the Jayhawks, could be Houston. Your schedule does sit pretty decent to get yourself to 6 wins. So I could totally see it happening.
Well, Houston is the space game, and they've never lost one. So, throw that on there as a win for me with Houston. Can they get a West Virginia team in flux? They just replaced their coach as well, too. I know that series hasn't gone the way that UCF fans would have liked, but certainly I think that's a game that they can get. We're at 4, and you need 2 more wins after that. I'm telling you, they're going to beat at least one team nobody thinks they're going to beat.
I love it.
This coach is going to have at least one surprise win this season.
Well, I'm hoping it's not Kansas State. So go ahead and tell Scott Frost and Milton to pick a different one. But I appreciate that. Thanks for listening to this Locked On College crossover, digging into the UCF Knights. That quarterback battle is going to be really fun this fall. Can Scott Frost find his happy place, stay in his happy place, and get himself to a bowl game in his first year back? That'll be the biggest question, one of the biggest questions we talk about in the Big 12 all year long. Please like the video. Please subscribe. This has been Christian Rao and Mike Giddens of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On UCF for Locked On College Crossover.